So we begin with our identity prayer. Here we go. I know that within myself there is that life which is perfect, complete, divine. It was never born and cannot die, for it lives and is God. Within myself is the wholeness, peace, poise, and power of life. This life is health, it is abundance, it is love. There is one life, and it is the life of God, and this is my life now, and so it is. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. It's really good to see you all. I wasn't in for Valentine's. Did you have a nice Valentine's? Yeah. Me too. It's my first full day as president of Centers for Spiritual Living. And some things are obviously occurring to me now that that's the case, things I didn't dare think of before. One is that I'm the president of the largest organization of religious science in history. We just did this integration thing, and the two organizations grew over the years. So this is way bigger than any one person has been president of before. And you know, that's one of those things that causes me to start hyperventilating again. But it's good, and as I climb up on the shoulders of giants, I find that there's still a lot to learn. And I'm glad to learn it. So I want to start by speaking of a former president of the United Church of Religious Science. Her name is Dr. Peggy Bassett. She was the senior founding minister of Huntington Beach Church of Religious Science. What was that, back in the 70s and 80s, probably, Barb? Okay. She had an amazing community. They decided not to buy property. They took over an abandoned shopping center and had, you know, one of those big department store type places. They made their sanctuary, and it was amazing. And the stories that came out of there were amazing. And people wanted to know, how'd you do this, Peggy? Of all the churches in our movement, how did you do this? And she had some thoughts on that. And I thought I'd share them with you. 8 points. The first one is, this is the question, or her answer to how to be a successful minister in our movement. Find your style and capitalize on it. Find your style and capitalize on it. So when I think about that for me, just between you and me, I'm not the best speaker in the movement. I'm a good speaker, and I can get my point across well. But we have some dazzling speakers in this movement. People who get up on stage and just take your breath away. I'm married to one of them. So what is mine? What is my style? My style is organization. And we've done that here. This community is one of the best organized centers in our movement. And the reason for that is that you have caught my vision of organization. And that's my style, is how can we do this better? How can we work together? How can we communicate? How can we share leadership? Those are the things that are important to me, and I think my best that I bring to not only this community, but to our movement. Her second one, and now she's going to go on a run here, is have an exciting big vision and share it constantly. An exciting big vision and share it constantly. She says, commit your time and your energy to your vision. She says, hold your vision up and keep communicating it. She says, form partnerships with people that want to play with you. She says, do everything in support of your vision. Allow others to support your vision with their gifts. And then her final one is, represent science of mind with excellence and commitment. So we've got this idea of style at the beginning and excellence and commitment at the end. And between it all is vision. Vision. About 6 years ago, a vision just absolutely captured me. And I know, you don't always know when these things happen, but I know exactly when it happened. Because I've been in this movement for a long time, since the early 1980s. And things always, every class on the science of mind when people hear that there are two organizations, everybody asks the question, why are there two organizations? And there was never a good answer. But I remember when it happened. I had decided to run for the office of Community Spiritual Leader of United Church of Religious Science. I think we were still that name at the time, maybe not. But it was right. It was certainly the position that I was running for. And Kathy Hearn, Dr. Kathy Hearn, was also running for re-election in that position. And my focus seemed to be that there were things in the organization that were going well. You remember me, organization? And I'm like on that, this organization thing. But I went and sat down with my shaman teacher, Will Rockingbear. And we said, and it's so casual when you do this. There's no, I mean, there are these real subtle formalities, but not many. So we're sitting there, and I'm telling him that I'm going to do this. And he asks that shamanic question, what do you want? Now, when a shaman asks you a question, the trick is don't think about it, just answer it. And that's exactly what happened. I didn't think about it, it just came out. What came out was, I want us to be one again. All those years, I knew there were two organizations, and there wasn't much chance that was going to change. Most people, if asked, would have told you that's impossible. They've grown too far apart in how they operate. They teach ministers differently. They have different curriculum. They're organized. Their structure's different. What's important to them in all of that is different. Which means that our form became more important than our principle. And when I said that to him, it was like it cracked me open. And he said, then go do it. Damn. So I contacted the president of the other organization, International. I guess it was still called Religious Science International at the time. And the man's name was Ken Gordon. And I said, I want us to be one. And he said, so do I. How do we do that? I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get elected as the leader of this organization so that I can negotiate with you how to do this. So the day in Miami when they had the election, and I got the call from the head of the election committee saying that I had not been elected, the first call I made was to Ken Gordon. And I said, Ken, I didn't get elected. And he said, well, we'll have to figure out some other way to do this. I said, okay. And there had been conversations, and for years there had been polite meetings of people from both organizations, but nothing really happened. And I was hearing, even within a year of that there were attempts on the international side to come together with United, and United said no. The leadership just said, no, we don't want to do that. But this was my vision, so I couldn't stop talking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop trying to imagine how it could be done. 3 months after I was not elected, there was an announcement that there had been a bit of a breakthrough. There actually seemed to be enough agreement that they really wanted to get serious and start looking at this. But the group of people that were doing this were called, at the time called, I think, the Bridge Committee, and the Visioning Bridge Committee, and they were going to vision, and if you know anything about vision, is Caroline in the room? There you are. So you know what, where's Caroline? There she is, hey girl. Caroline is head of our visioning team, and what you know about visioning is you have to be careful not to think you have to act on the vision. You have to know the vision. That's the whole job, is to get quiet and to know the vision. But then it's not like, okay, here's our agenda out of that. That doesn't exist. So this group's going to vision, they're going to have that thought, they're going to talk, but they have absolutely no power to change anything. Still, I wanted to be on that team. And I asked and was told no, and asked and was told no. Well, the next year I was elected to the core council, which is the governing body, and then I went back and said, okay, now can I be on it? And it seems that while I'm asking, the chair of that committee is saying, I want John Waterhouse on this committee. I didn't know that until just a couple of weeks ago. And So it happened. I got to be on the committee, but here was the deal. All the meetings were in Southern California, and there was no budget to pay for me to be there, so I had to pay my own way. So I got snotty about that for about a minute, and then said, John, you're on the committee, shut up. Pay it. Pay whatever it is. So I went to my first meeting, and one of the former presidents of ICSL came to me quietly and said, I think we should pay for half of your costs to be here. And I started crying. It was like, God, they love me. You know, so I had all this energy and all this, and I was obsessive with this. I'm telling you, I was pushing people a little too hard at times because I really wanted this to work. But what happened was that Dr. Hearn called a meeting of United people to do some strategic planning. And I was the one that was talking about strategic planning for years and was the only chair of strategic planning that United had ever had. So I got invited to the meeting. But what Dr. Kathy figured out just a couple of weeks before we were to meet was that we really should invite those people from international to come too. So she called Ken and said, would you and some of your people come? And they said, okay, and none of us knew what was going to happen. I was freaking out. If we blow this by getting together and locking horns, I'm going to freak out. And I think I didn't help myself with that. But we had that meeting, and what we realized within the first few minutes was that this was about doing this thing, doing this integration thing, and bringing ourselves back together. And the people in the room now had the authority to do it, because they were members of the governing bodies. And there we were, and we had hired a facilitator to lead us through strategic planning, and then all we're talking about is integration, and it was so perfect. Dr. Ken asked me that day to come up with a design for how it could look. So I went home, and I created a timeline and a model for how I thought it could work, bringing the two models together, of governance anyway, not all the other departments, but at least how the leadership would look. And that's what we elected last week. The people to fill that model that I came up with. And it just kept growing and getting clearer. And then we would have our core council meetings, and no one would mention integration. They'd have all this other stuff to talk about. So I finally said, no, we have to talk about integration every meeting. Okay, John, you can talk about integration every meeting. And so at the last thing on the agenda of every meeting of the core council was integration update. Doesn't that sound like it's something on Saturday Night Live? And so I would tell them whatever was going on, and half the people in the room already knew what was going on, but they left it for me. So, and it got to where all the reports from all the departments that we would listen to became about integration. And finally we said, John, do we really still need to do this at the end? I go, of course not. We already did. We're doing it as the whole meeting. That's all we're talking about. So we did it. We created it. We created it. Last year we voted in our governing documents, and last week we voted in our leadership. And we have great leaders. We have great people doing this. One of the things that the president gets to do is run for chair of what is now called the Leadership Council. But if you notice from that picture, a couple of middle-aged white guys got elected. So what seemed prudent for me and appropriate was to elect a woman to be the head of to chair our Leadership Council. So Reverend Heather Clark from San Juan Capistrano is the chair of our Leadership Council, and I'm very proud that she is. She's going to be a great leader, a great team member in what we're doing. So this idea of community splitting is not new. And I've said over and over again, the history here is not about us splitting 58 years and 28 days ago. It's about what we've done to come back together, and how extraordinary that is. Having differences of opinion is human nature. Wanting to get together with people that align with you. You know, the Reformation, that whole thing where Martin Luther, created Lutherans, and John Calvin created Presbyterians. I mean, how could Lutherans and Presbyterians ever come together? I can't tell the difference. But apparently there are people in the world that can. And that seems very important to them. And we played the same game. I was only 4 months old when it happened, but I'll own it. We played the same game. That those other guys just were not right. You know, there was just something terribly wrong about them, and we can't talk with them. We can't associate with them. Let's speak of oneness. So, I have one other thing to say about that time of running for the spiritual leader that was really important to me and poignant. Francis Leahy came to me. After I got back and I wasn't elected, stood on the stage and said, "I'm still your minister," and everyone was here that day and cheered, which was really wonderful. But he came to me and he said, "John, when I treat, it always happens and I don't understand." And what I knew in that moment was, I said, "Francis, your treatment is manifest. It's just not time yet for us to see it." And he was absolutely with me on that. And I know he'd be happy today to know that treatment works. Even Ernest Holmes knew it was going to happen. I want to share his words. He sent a letter to the first president of the church association that was not yet called Religious Science International, but that after the split, the first person elected president of that other organization, his name was Raymond Charles Barker. And Dr. Barker and Dr. Holmes remained friends till the end of their lives. And Dr. Holmes wrote a letter to Raymond. This is what he said in that letter. "I'm sure your interest in the permanency of the movement is the same as mine, even though we are on two sides of the same coin. Of course, I know the whole thing will come back together when the right time comes, because it is the logical thing to do, and I think in the long run, common sense usually wins." So we have done the documents, we have elected leaders, but we are so not done. It's still at the beginning of this process. So here's the game that's being played now. When we go to these things, and you want to refer to those other organizations, we say, the ones formerly known as. Every time they say that, I'm looking around for the musician Prince to walk in. So we're dancing with the words, and we still have our old ways of doing things that we need to get over. So that's what we have to work on, and that, I believe, is why I was elected president, because that's my thing. My thing is to work with organization, to work with culture, to help us really find a way to let go of the old, the way we used to, what used to be important, and create the new way. It's begun, and it's going to be my work for the next few years. I'm not leaving here. This is my home, and I am still your minister. But I'm going to be working with people all over the world to move us into that place of absolutely knowing who we are in a new way, and to accept this role that we have in the world. I said on Thursday night at our banquet, when I was asked to speak, I said that I'm pretty good with business. I've got a good business mind. And I'm going to enjoy this now, that when someone asks me what I do, and I can tell them I'm in business, when they ask me what business, I'm in the business of transforming the world. And you're a big part of this, and I want to make sure that you know that. Because as the president of Centers for Spiritual Living, a lot of people are going to be looking at us. They're going to want to see that we have our act together as a community, and I know we do. But there will be people that are going to show up from our other communities around the country, because what's going on in Asheville that's so special, they're going to want to come see. And you know what? We're doing it. We are incredibly well organized. Our model of shared leadership is as good as any community in our movement. And we are creating change here. We are creating change through all of our multimedia processes. And we're really making a difference in the world, and I am so proud of us. And I'm calling on you to continue. Those of you who are leaders, those of you who are in service, in sacred service in our community, to please, please, please step it up a little bit. Because I got to look outside for a while. I got to look in other directions. And we need to staying as viable and vital as we have always been. So thank you for the way you love this place, for the way you support this community. It's now become important not only to us, but to everyone in our spiritual movement. And we're being called to do great things in the world. So to help me sustain myself through this process over these past 6 years, there's actually some Bible I want to give you. It comes from Isaiah. Don't be afraid. You know what? Isaiah, the great prophet, Old Testament guys. In the 58th chapter of Isaiah, the 11th and 12th verses say this: "You shall always be divinely guided. Your needs will be satisfied with rich food. And your bones will remain strong. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail." And some of you will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the foundations of many generations. And you will be called the repairer of the breach and the restorer of paths to dwell in. That's what we're doing.
Amen.
The breach is over, and the work has begun. I am so grateful to be doing it with you. We've had an amazing 17 years of being in this community. And you are such a beautiful reflection of the presence of God. And I wouldn't want to do this with anybody more than you. Thank you for who you are in my life and now in the life of this movement. I love you very much.